Hey there folks, how's it going? I am finally back home after about a month on the road to Missy Raines in Allegheny, which was a super fun time all over the place, playing a lot of great shows, seeing a lot of friends at festivals and IBMA. If I met you out there somewhere at a festival or IBMA, it was nice to meet you. Hope to meet some more of you soon. But now I'm finally back home and I'm ready to actually start learning some more stuff myself. Whenever I'm traveling or playing gigs, I don't get to practice as much as I'd really like to, or at least I don't get to learn so many new things. I'm usually practicing whatever I'm supposed to be playing or just trying to stay in shape. But now that I'm back, I'm actually looking for new things to play, which always means checking out recordings that I haven't heard before or ones that I've already heard, but there's something about it that I want to learn. Maybe there's a cool lick or something. And that's what happened just the other day when I was listening to a cool version of Clinch Mountain Backstep, the Ralph Stanley tune. But it's actually Scott Vestal's version from an album called Bluegrass 96. And it's part of a series of records. There's Bluegrass 95, 96, 97. I'm not sure how many there are. There's a bunch of them, and Scott plays on all of them. And it's just a bunch of really great instrumental tunes. And obviously, Scott plays some really cool stuff on there. And generally, the way I decide to learn stuff is just listening to the music that I like. And when I hear something that I don't quite understand or just makes my ears perk up a little bit, I decide, okay, well, I'm going to learn that lick or maybe that solo, whatever it is. So there's a bunch of really cool stuff Scott plays throughout this record, but also throughout this tune, Clinch Mountain Backstep. There were just two licks that jumped out at me, and it just made me curious what's going on there. So I decided to investigate, and I learned them, and now I'm passing that on to you, I guess. And so that's what you heard at the beginning of this video, is kind of that condensed version of Clinch Mountain Backstep. The two parts that don't really sound like the melody of Clinch Mountain Backstep or anything that Ralph Stanley would have played, well, those are those two Scott Vestal licks. So let's start off with the first one, which is kind of a chromatic, melodic, single string, bluesy. It's kind of got everything in there, but it's a great way to end that first A section phrase. By the way, if you want tablature for every example in this video, you can find that at patreon.com/EliGilbertBanjo, which is where I post all the tablature bonus content, all that kind of stuff for all of my YouTube videos. Also, just real quick, if you don't mind, please subscribe to this channel and like this video. It's a huge thing you can do to help me make more of these videos, so if you do that, I really appreciate it. Anyway, back to the lesson. So this lick starts out with a melodic passage that's mostly chromatic. F sharp G is where it actually gets chromatic like that, which sounds like this. And there's a bunch of different licks that include that little passage, so it's a good thing to know, especially out of a G position, even though we're in the key of A, but G position. And some of the licks that I know, or that just come to mind immediately anyway, that use that little shape there would be something like... or one like this. All of which kind of sound like Scott Vestal, Bela Fleck type licks. They both use that little shape all the time. And it's a cool sound because you get a little bit of that G7, dominant sound, but there's some chromaticism, and it lends itself into going into more of a bluesy pattern afterwards really well. And that's actually what happens in the rest of the original lick that I'm trying to show you, not just those two for free. But the rest of what happens is a single string phrase just using the G minor blues scale. And this is a cool spot where things can open up a lot because you don't necessarily have to play exactly that pattern, but it is a great one to learn. You won't necessarily play that exact pattern every time you want to use that shape, but it gives you a lot of resources if you want to play other things. And the way Scott's using it in this case just omits the note D, but if you wanted to think about this as part of the entire G minor blues scale, think about this shape. So while it's good to learn this actual lick because it just sounds so good, and it's a good thing to build up your muscle memory for that kind of shape, you can think about this entire shape as containing a lot of great information that's going to sound bluesy just by nature of what the sound of that scale is. So that's how the lick goes and kind of how I'm thinking about it, but here's how Scott uses it in the A section of Clinch Mountain Backstep. Now the second lick I'm going to show you is probably my favorite of the two just because it's so interesting. Here's how that one sounds. Now, once again, we're dealing with a lot of blues scale material, kind of the same as before, but just a different position, different techniques, all that. So there's a lot going on, but for the most part, the notes we're dealing with are... It's a little different the way it actually plays out in the lick, but that's, again, just another shape for the blues scale. And for the most part, what he's doing here is just bouncing off of these open strings with pull-offs, which really you could do on any part of the blues scale here. At that point, it really starts to sound more like electric guitar vocabulary, which there might be a limit on how tasteful that's going to be in this case. But obviously, the way Scott does it here really works for me. So he's mostly just doing that through the blues scale. And then when we get to this double stop, that to me just sounds like Southern rock, electric guitar. Like a lot of this is really electric guitar sounding stuff to me. And in this case, this lick is a really clever way to get to the 5 chord partway through the B section of Clinch Mountain Backstep. So here's how that all fits together. Now, those 2 licks in those exact spots in Clinch Mountain Backstep will serve you well. If you're looking for a way to spice up that particular tune or just looking to make a new arrangement for the way that you play that tune, those things will work great. They obviously work great for Scott, so good enough for him, good enough for me. But usually what I like to do if I'm learning something new is try to find new ways to use stuff, not exactly the way I learned it. I find I understand it a lot better if I tinker with it a bit and see where else I can fit it. And there are kind of always going to be endless ways to do that, but sometimes I'll just try to find a tune that might sound kind of similar, might have a similar vibe, and just see how can I make it have that effect. The same effect that it had in Clinch Mountain Backstep, I wanted to have that effect in something else. So it's a little bit more my experience with that lick. So after messing with a couple things, I found a way to use these licks in a version of In the Gravel Yard, which is a vocal song but has kind of a similar vibe to Clinch Mountain Backstep. So this is maybe an idea for what you could play, maybe not as a kickoff to this song, but the next time your solo comes around, you might play something like this. So in that example, I use one of the licks in their entirety, the first one here. That one right there, I played in its entirety. The next one I had to just sort of tweak a little bit. There's a lot of different ways that you can use all these licks, but a good thing to also be able to do is use it where it seems like it fits and then trim the edges where it doesn't fit. So starting out, it sounded fine, but then I realized that I had to end the lick a lot sooner because it's a relatively long lick. So what you'll find sometimes is you can use like the first half or just the second half. You can trim a couple notes out at the end, that sort of thing. And that's partially what's going to make this lick your own, but it's also going to help you understand the material, the positions, the shapes, all that stuff a lot better. Anyway, that's the stuff that I'm checking out right now. Hope that was helpful or interesting. Make sure you check out Patreon if you want the tablature for anything you saw in this video or any of my videos. Go ahead and subscribe to this channel, like this video, all that stuff, of course. But that's going to do it for this one. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.